As a woman who had built her entire adult life around family, routine, and the man I'd married 15 years ago, nothing could have prepared me for the emotional freefall I was about to experience. My name is Susan, and I'd always thought of myself as rational, grounded, and deeply committed to the home David and I had created together. We weren't perfect, but we had our rhythm. Shared grocery lists, tag-teamed parent-teacher conferences, inside jokes whispered during late-night dishwashing. I was a teacher, balancing my passion for education with the chaos of raising Emma and Jake, our two beautiful children. David, a hardworking lawyer, often put in long hours at the firm, especially now that he was angling for partner. I trusted him, perhaps blindly. But then came that one night. I was putting laundry away when I heard the conversation that would upend everything. My knowledge of Thai, a remnant of my years teaching abroad before marriage, had always been a quiet secret, a part of my past life I rarely discussed. So when I overheard May, the massage therapist at Element Spa, speaking candidly to a coworker on speakerphone about a client who had requested a happy ending, I was stunned. And even more so when she named him David. My David. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, every sense sharpened by disbelief. May had said it like it wasn't the first time, like it was expected. For a while, I tried to convince myself I had misheard or misunderstood. But as the days unfolded and David's behavior subtly shifted, the late nights, the evasiveness, I couldn't shake the gnawing suspicion growing inside me. I began to unravel quietly. I read forum threads, combed our financial statements for spa charges, and engaged in clandestine stakeouts outside his office building. I was searching for answers, not just about whether my husband had betrayed me physically, but about the truth of our entire life together. The pain of uncertainty was worse than any confirmation could have been. Because how do you keep loving someone when you start fearing that everything you share is built on lies? The separation was meant to bring clarity, but instead, it unraveled something in me I didn't know existed, a quiet chaos that filled the moments between work and parenting with suspicion, grief, and the aching emptiness of what-ifs. Each morning I woke in that sterile apartment surrounded by white walls and cardboard boxes that still hadn't been unpacked. I wondered if I was mourning a real betrayal or my imagination's cruel invention. David continued to text sweet, well-meaning updates about the kids, their school achievements, their little accidents, their funny stories that should have brought joy, but instead reminded me of how fragmented our lives had become. When Emma scored highest in her math test and Jake finally made the basketball team, David sent me pictures with captions like, "You should have seen Emma's face," and "He was so proud, he almost cried," and each time I read them, I felt like a stranger witnessing my family from a distance. On Wednesdays, when I picked them up for dinner, Emma would slide into the passenger seat with arms crossed, and Jake would chatter about the week as if trying to fill the silence his sister stubbornly guarded. "Dad says we're still a family," she said once, her voice sharp like a knife. "Is that true? Or are you two lying to us like grown-ups do?" I didn't know how to answer, and silence became my default. The routine should have made things easier, drop-offs, pickups, scheduled calls, but instead, it hollowed me out, each interaction with David marked by surface-level civility masking a turbulent undercurrent. We avoided looking at each other too long. We avoided discussing anything beyond logistics. When we did speak, about Jake's growing obsession with space or Emma's new friend with a pierced eyebrow, it was in that brittle tone reserved for coworkers who used to be friends. At night, I curled up on the couch with a blanket that smelled like my old life and scrolled Reddit forums filled with women like me, doubtful, dissecting, emotionally frayed. One post described emotional cheating as death by 1,000 paper cuts, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe David hadn't slept with anyone. Maybe he hadn't even crossed a hard line. But he'd flirted with the idea, dipped his toes in the waters of betrayal, and that possibility soaked into the fabric of my reality until even the kindest gesture from him felt like manipulation. When I passed by couples in grocery stores arguing over pasta sauce, I envied them. Their certainty, their unity, their assumption that tomorrow would be like today. I no longer had that. My life had become a string of questions with no answers. Had he ever touched her? Did he lie when he said he loved only me? Had he considered me when he asked May for more than just muscle relief? Did he stop himself because of love or fear of consequence? The answers didn't matter as much as the question's existence. The doubt had planted roots in my spine, curling into every nerve. And worst of all, I realized I didn't miss David. I missed who I was when I trusted him. The holiday party at David's firm was supposed to be a chance to restore some normalcy, or at least, that's how he framed it when he pleaded with me to attend. Peterson will be there, he said with hopeful eyes. You can finally meet him and his girlfriend. I think you'd really like her. I almost declined. The thought of putting on a mask and exchanging pleasantries in a room full of polished strangers felt unbearable. But something about David's expression, the mixture of anxiety and determination, softened me. Maybe it was guilt for how distant I'd become, or curiosity about seeing May face to face. So I said yes. That night, I slipped into a black dress I hadn't worn since our anniversary and painted on a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. The ballroom at the Hilton was awash in soft gold lighting and clinking glasses, laughter layered over the hum of polite conversation. David held my hand tightly as we moved through the crowd, pointing out colleagues and making small talk. Then I saw her. Standing beside Peterson, May wore a sleek cocktail dress that clung to her confidently. She spotted me and blinked, just once, before regaining her poise. Robert, this is my wife, Susan, David said. Susan, this is Robert Peterson and his girlfriend. May, she said, extending her hand. Lovely to meet you. Our handshake was firm, our smiles practiced. The air between us vibrated with what we weren't saying. Small talk followed, teaching, law, holiday plans, and David's hand hovered at the small of my back, a gesture I used to adore but now felt like possession. When May excused herself to use the restroom, I followed. Inside the dimly lit lounge, she checked to make sure we were alone before turning to me. Why did you come? Her tone wasn't hostile, just tired. He wanted me too. I didn't know you'd be here. She nodded, touching up her lipstick. Your husband doesn't know you came to see me, right? I shook my head. Good. Let's keep it that way, for everyone's sake. I hesitated. Does Robert know? She glanced at the mirror.
No.
And he never will. He doesn't need to know what his lawyer tried to do. We stood in silence, two women tethered by an ugly truth neither could fully escape. Finally, she said, I'm leaving Elements next month, moving to a spa closer to Robert's place. Relief swept through me like a breeze in a stuffy room. Can I ask you something? I whispered. Do you think he's done it with anyone else? She didn't flinch. I don't know. But I can tell you this. He's not the only man who asks. Some therapists turn them down. Others don't. It's not right, but it happens. I stared at my reflection. So, he might have? She gave a helpless shrug. I hope not. For your sake. We returned to the party separately. David chatted with his coworkers as if nothing had happened. I sipped champagne and cataloged spas across the city, wondering how many bore the same secrets as May. The morning after the party, I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at my reflection in the dresser mirror. My dress from the night before lay crumpled on the floor, a silent witness to everything I had heard and felt. My mind reeled with the weight of May's words. Even though she had tried to shield me from specifics, the silence between her statements screamed louder than anything she could have said. David was still asleep in the guest room, a makeshift arrangement he insisted on whenever I stayed over with the kids. Our house had become a halfway point in our fractured relationship, no longer fully mine or his, just a shell echoing the life we once had. That morning, something inside me solidified. I couldn't continue orbiting this limbo, caught between a past I didn't trust and a future I couldn't see. I made coffee, poured myself a cup, and sat outside on the patio, the same one where we used to host barbecues and watch the kids chase fireflies. The sunrise cast long shadows across the lawn, and I remembered how David used to kiss my shoulder in the early morning light, whispering plans for our weekends, dreams for our future. Now, those moments felt like stolen memories. When David joined me, he looked rough, eyes puffy, hair disheveled, and I could tell the previous night had haunted him too. He sat beside me, wrapped his fingers around his mug, and stared at the horizon. "Did you talk to her?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "What did she say?" "Enough." He exhaled. "I didn't go through with it."
I swear to you, Susan.
I was stupid. I was lonely. I let the stress of work and our distance twist me into someone I don't recognize. But I stopped before anything happened. I turned to him. "Do you even hear yourself? You didn't go through with it, like that's something to be proud of? Like that absolves you of wanting to—"
He looked down.
I was wrong. "No," I said, voice trembling. "You were a coward. You didn't tell me. You let me live in that house, sleep beside you, laugh at your jokes, while you were thinking about someone else's hands on your body." The truth hung between us, rancid and undeniable. "What do you want now?" he asked after a long pause. I sipped my coffee. "I want peace. I want to stop questioning everything. I want to trust again, even if that means trusting someone new, or maybe just myself." He swallowed hard. "Does that mean we're done?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stood, walked back inside, and began packing the rest of my things. Over the next few days, I found an attorney and began drafting divorce papers. David didn't protest. In fact, he offered to handle most of the legal logistics himself. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love twisted by regret. Either way, I appreciated not having to fight anymore. The kids took it as well as could be expected. Emma cried the first night, then steeled herself like the brave girl she always tried to be. Jake asked if it meant he could have 2 birthdays. I smiled through my tears. We created a new rhythm: custody schedules, co-parenting apps, therapy appointments. Through it all, I found small pieces of myself returning. I joined a book club, started running again, even took a weekend trip with friends to the mountains. I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. Not because life was easier, but because I had finally chosen myself. Months passed, and life gradually shaped itself into something new, something unexpectedly liberating. I had feared that divorce would define me, that I would become the woman who was cheated on, a shadow of my former self. But with each passing week, I discovered dimensions of myself I had long buried beneath the roles of wife, mother, teacher. I redecorated my apartment, not to mimic the house I'd left behind, but to reflect who I was becoming. Bold colors, thrifted artwork, a record player that filled the evenings with old jazz and new memories. Emma and Jake grew more comfortable in this new normal. They had questions, of course, and emotions that swelled and receded like tides, but I never lied to them. I told them love sometimes changes, and even when people stop being married, they never stop being family. David and I kept things amicable, mostly for their sake, but also because resentment was a weight I no longer had room for. He apologized again, once in a handwritten letter that arrived unexpectedly in the mail. I read it with trembling hands and tear-blurred vision. He spoke of shame, of fear, of loving me but not knowing how to be vulnerable. He didn't ask for another chance. He just wanted me to know the truth. And that was enough. I never responded, but I kept the letter tucked in a drawer, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of the storms I survived. One afternoon, while shopping for school supplies with Emma, I ran into May again, this time at a bookstore. She looked different, happier, more at ease. We exchanged polite hellos, and as we turned to leave, she called out, "You're stronger than you think." I smiled. I believed her. As autumn painted the city in hues of amber and gold, I finally felt rooted again. Not in another person, not in a perfect marriage or suburban ideal, but in myself. I had learned to trust my instincts, to set boundaries, to forgive without forgetting. And more than anything, I had learned that healing is not linear. It's messy, unpredictable, sometimes unbearably slow. But it's also beautiful. It's in the quiet mornings with coffee, in the laughter of children echoing through hallways, in the books that transport you, and the friends who anchor you. It's in saying no without guilt, in choosing peace over familiarity, in looking at your reflection and seeing not a woman scorned, but a woman reclaimed. My name is Susan. I am a mother, a teacher, a woman who rebuilt her life from the rubble of betrayal. And I am not broken. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindle Stories for more heartfelt journeys like mine.